Welcome to my in-depth guide on Android 17. Within this video I aim to share as much 17 knowledge I have at my disposal as possible, so whether you want to pick him up for your team and want to learn how he works, or if you want to learn how to deal with him efficiently, this guide will help you out. Even if you feel that you're pretty familiar with the character, watch this anyway. You might learn something new. A small disclaimer: the footage shown was gathered during multiple points in time with various levels of quality, but everything should be relevant to the 1.34 version of the game. Also, note that this guide was made on the assumption that you, the viewer, has basic knowledge on the mechanics and terms of the game, as well as knowledge of common fighting game terminology. If not, read up on all of that first. Let's get started.
Take better care of the plants around you, or become the fertilizer that feeds them. The choice is yours.
Android 17 is a mix-up-centric character that boasts high meter gain and unique mobility options. 17 features some big strengths that add to his appeal, namely being his pressure and mix-up. With multiple lows, command overheads, solo plus frames, feints, and cross-ups, in addition to more universal options like Dragon Rush, 17 can become very difficult for anyone to defend against. His pressure is also boosted by the fact with his driver follow-ups he can negate guard cancel entirely. His offense becomes even scarier when combined with assists. Speaking of, 17 has an incredible assist selection that most, if not every character can use. His A assist has unique uses for offense, allowing your point character to use or set up mix-up options without worrying about mashing, reversals, or universal defensive options, and allows for defensive applications to cover yourself safely after doing something that would most likely lead to a punish. His B assist, being a fast high block stun assist, allows characters to set up more difficult to block mix-ups, as well as setting up fuzzies due to its single hitting nature. It also guarantees 17 power blitz, his best move and one of the best beams in the game when he's on point, and more interestingly, it has fixed hit stun, regardless of combo length or scaling. His C assist is a fully horizontally tracking assist with 55 frames of block stun, and since it keeps opponents grounded for the first 2 hits it can create gimmicky resets. It also has head and bowl to boot. 17 also boasts some incredibly high meter gain and spends little for larger sums of damage, which can help in building resources for his teammates, or just spending big chunks of meter for damage. Lastly, 17 has unique options that allow him to traverse the neutral in ways that can throw off his opponents, such as his XL driver that has head and bowl as he runs across the floor, his acrobatic assault which can help escape unfavorable scenarios and navigate the air, and his fast fall to add an unpredictability in his movements or to bait certain options. Some other pros include some high damaging supers, strong corner Oki, a universal tracking level 1 DHC, high happy birthday potential, and unique defensive options. More on that later. However, 17 has some problems that might turn you away, mainly being his neutral. 17 has range issues that can be shown apparent when faced against most characters. His normals have generally less range compared to other characters, making it hard to challenge some characters' pressure strings, and his long-range capabilities leave much to be desired. Despite his movement options being plentiful, none of them help in avoiding projectiles or standing normals, and combined with a mediocre 5S, a very shallow angled JS which halts his air momentum, and his only full screen beam being only sometimes available leads to 17 being easily zoned out. 17 is also somewhat resource reliant. For most solo combos, if 17 wants to get good damage off of his hits, he'll always use half a bar for mid-combo extensions with EX reverse gear, which stunts his meter gain. Alternatively, he could use an assist to get both damage and meter gain, but that's if he has one to use in the first place. 17 is also reliant on assists to help him out in neutral to get in more safely, due to his aforementioned bad long-range game. 17's solo offensive capabilities are also easier to deal with, as his cross-ups and XL driver overheads and fake-out lows can be easily be chicken blocked on reaction, and his 2H into overhead or fast fall low RPS yields much less reward on hit and has some specific counterplay. More on that later. And, even if this is mostly a short-term problem, 17's XL driver follow-ups and cancel options can be tricky to use if you aren't paying attention or haven't built up the knowledge to use correctly, which in the heat of the moment can lead to making character losing mistakes. His relatively higher skill floor may dissuade you from playing him, but what he offers can more than make up for his flaws. If you're a fan of extremely hard to block, meter building, solid damaging characters with great support value that enables mix-ups for other characters, as well as meter for the next character in your team rotation, 17 is for you. Seventeen's position on a team is dependent on what you want out of the character. Because of his tools, he doesn't have an obvious position to place him in, so if you want to play him, it's up to you to decide what you prefer. Do you prefer to abuse his A assist as much as possible? Do you prefer to utilize his kit in conjunction with assists to snowball the round? Or how about a more balanced team composition as a whole? If point 17 is your preference, 17 excels with horizontal beam and beam-like assists the most, as they enable his mix-ups, assists his neutral, and give him good combo extensions. Some lockdown C assists, especially Majin 21's or Blue Vegeta's, elevates 17's performance, as they allow for full-screen 4-way mix-ups off of any blocked power blitz. They guarantee power blitz during any combo, even if you threw out power blitz mid-combo, increasing his damage and meter gain by a good amount. They also offer corner steal level 3 mix-ups, which I'll explain later. If you want to put 17 in the back, characters who profit off of his A assist generally have high-low setups that need protection from guard cancel, or characters with a strong strike throw game. The A assist can be universally used for safe super dash high-lows in the corner, as well as a safety net for whiff moves, post-reflect scrambles, and masking dragon rush. His B assist is excellent in conjunction with projectile into super dash cancel savvy characters, like Majin 21 or Kefla. It's useful for setting up powerful mix-ups, as well as mid-screen super dash high-lows, as it doesn't have much pushback on block, and because it has fixed hit stun, it can be a useful damage booster in extremely long combos. Since it stocks 3 power blitzes at maximum, it also strengthens 17's point potential as well. Though do note the range issue I mentioned earlier. His C assist is useful for general lockdown C assist applications, such as gapless super dash high-low mix-ups, good combo extensions and the ability to convert off of stray hits well. Its head invulnerability also means it can be used somewhat defensively against super dash or other aerial attacks. This is a tier list I've made displaying 17's general synergy with the cast. This one is based on who benefits from his A assist. And this one is based on who benefits from his B assist. (5L) A6 frame light with subpar range. Otherwise, it functions as any standard 5L does. (2L) A standard low light attack. It has a unique property in where it will combo into 5LL if his 5L whiffs in a combo. 5LL. A 7-frame medium scaling attack with not much range. 5LLL. A lunging attack in which 17 has low invulnerability, allowing him to crush low attacks of all kind. JL. A standard jumping light attack. 5M. A 9-frame advancing normal that nearly travels round start distance. 2M. A fast short-range sweep which is safe on block. 6M. The generic universal overhead. 8JM. A 9-frame air normal with good horizontal reach. 5H. A generic heavy attack sharing all its properties from Android 18's 5H. 2H. The standard anti-air with stellar vertical reach. 3H. An extra low normal with good reach. 2H, this normal also anti-airs. While 17 is sliding, his hurt box becomes low enough to avoid certain projectiles. 8H. A jumping heavy attack that has less vertical range than most other jumping heavy attacks. 2H. A generic normal which primarily sees use in combos and not anywhere else. 5S. A standard key blast attack. 17 shoots out 6 blasts. JS. A steep angled key blast volley with a large amount of hit stun. 17 shoots 3 waves of 2 key blasts at maximum. This combos into super dash from a majority of ranges. I'm going to first cover 17's S specials as his other specials have unique properties I'll explain later. Power Blitz Charge, the only safe on block special that 17 has in his disposal. 17 has access to Power Blitz once the yellow flash from his hands comes out. Power Blitz. 17 throws 2 beam level projectiles. This special is plus on block and does a sliding knockdown on hit. Because 17 throws 2 beams, his opponents would need 2 beams to cancel it out. Unlike base Goku's Spirit Bomb, 17 will keep Power Blitz if he got hit before he could throw the attack. Acrobatic Assault. 17 leaps to a wall and rebounds off of it in a diagonal angle. Doing 2-3-6S will have him leap to the wall in front of him, and 2-1-4S will have him leap to the wall behind him. After jumping off the wall, 17 can do any air action immediately, except blocking or air dashing. 17 can do 2 acrobatic assaults if the first one was done on the ground. He cannot do so if the initial acrobatic assault was done in the air. Now I'll explain 17's most unique special, his driver series. Similar to Noel's Chain Revolver, Angel's Unchained Circle and Akihiko's Cyclone, these moves are a sort of Rekka which puts 17 in a sort of stance that I'll call Driver, in which he gains access to specials exclusive to this stance. Unlike someone like Videl whose follow-ups follow a narrow path, 17's Driver specials can be used in any order. There are some rules to these specials that you must take note of. 17 has 4 moves that put him in Driver, which I'll refer to as Driver Starters, being XL Driver, Finishing Driver, the aerial version of Second Gear, and the aerial version of Fake Out. When in Driver, 17 has access to a total of 5 exclusive specials which can be used in any order, and can be cancelled into one another on hit, block, or whiff. He can also cancel into his Driver Starters from his Driver Specials, or even just from his other Driver Starters, so long as those Driver Starters are on the ground. 17 cannot use the same Driver Special more than once. In order to use them again he needs to use another Driver Starter. While in Driver, his S specials no longer need the full motion input to be used, and instead just need a directional input. First let's talk about the Driver Starters. XL Driver. 17 runs a certain distance before striking. The light version is the fastest and the shortest traveling. The medium version is slower and travels nearly full screen. The heavy version will have 17 run through his opponent before striking. The light and medium versions have head invulnerability on the 4th frame, while the heavy version has frame 1 head invulnerability. The medium and heavy versions, when held down, will have 17 do a feint. He still has head invulnerability while he runs and will still reach the respective distances. The heavy version can be cancelled into other Driver follow-ups as soon as he runs past his opponent. Finishing Driver. 17 does a backwards shuffle before commencing an attack that is similar to his XL Driver. During this backwards movement, 17 has projectile and head invulnerability on the 4th frame across all versions. As soon as 17 finishes his backwards movement, he can cancel into his other Driver follow-ups. The running portion of this special functions exactly like the corresponding strength of XL Driver. Aerial Second Gear. 17 does a falling elbow attack which hits as an overhead. The light one has him drop directly below him and does a soft knockdown. The medium version travels about round start distance and does a sliding knockdown, and the heavy version travels a bit farther and does a small ground bounce into a sliding knockdown. These overheads can all be anti-aired. Aerial Fake Out. 17 does a small jump arc before falling to the floor. The light version travels in a similar distance as the aerial medium second gear. The medium version travels backwards, and the heavy version has 17 drop straight down. Next, is Driver Specials. Top Gear. A straight mid punch, and the best damage scaling Driver Special. The light version is 8 frames on startup with short range, and the medium version is 10 frames with incredible range. Second Gear. A leaping overhead. The light version has a startup of 25 frames and travels a small distance, while the medium version has a startup of 26 frames and travels half screen. Both versions hit 2 frames later on crouching opponents. Unlike the aerial version of Second Gear, these versions cannot be anti-aired. Low Gear. A sweep which hits low. The light version hits on the 10th frame and covers a small range, while the medium version has a startup of 12 frames and goes about around start distance. Fake out. 17 does a jump in an arc resembling his second gear attack. The light and medium versions travel as far as the light and medium versions of his second gear. Reverse gear. 17 emits a barrier. Like the barriers of Android 18 and Lab Coat 21, he is invulnerable to all physical and projectile attacks, is invulnerable until he returns to his neutral stance after the barrier is struck, loses to supers and grabs of all kind, even after the barrier is hit, and for every hit he gains a set amount of meter. Unlike those other barriers, 17 is invincible on the first frame, cannot cancel into other specials or supers, and has access to a unique follow-up in which he can combo from once the barrier has been hit. This follow-up behaves like other driver specials, however, it cannot be cancelled into other specials on block or whiff. It is only cancelable on a clean hit against the opposing point character. Otherwise, on block it can only be cancelled into Vanish or any of his supers, but not Sparking Blast. Heavy reverse gear is the only heavy driver special 17 has. This version of reverse gear has less active frames than the light version, has the ability to use the follow-up whenever the player wants, and has invulnerability over supers. However, it still loses to grabs of all kind. Unlike the regular follow-up, this version is cancelable into other driver specials on hit and block, but not on whiff. Endgame. 17's highest damaging level 1. 17 will track to the opponent's back and do a 3-hit combo. If the final hit kills, he will do a small animation preventing other DHCs. Barrier Explosion. If done on the ground, this super has 17 tracked to his opponent's vertical position. This version of the super is also his DHC. If done in the air, he will not track the opponent. This super is also frame 1 invincible to all attacks, but can be anti-aired. For some reason, this super scales way better than other invincible level 1s. Take a look at this comparison with Bardock's super. Super Electric Strike. A beam type level 3 which can also be used in the air. Its damage and startup is typical for this type of super. A-Assist. 17 does the heavy version of reverse gear. The barrier is invincible on the 10th frame and will not defend against supers. This assist features defensive and offensive tools and has considerable block stun and hit stun. B-Assist. 17 does Power Blitz Charge. This assist is a fast strike assist with high block stun, and when used will guarantee Power Blitz for 17 when he's on point. This assist has issues in mid-screen block strings where certain normals or specials advance too forward, or have a noticeable amount of pushback. Oddly, the hit stun of this assist will never change, unlike other assists. Take a look at this comparison with Blue VG to understand. C assist. A block stun type C assist. Like other C assists of this kind, this assist tracks across the floor and has 55 frames of block stun, but it also has head invulnerability, though it's more of a bonus than a feature. Now I'll break down 17's neutral, starting from round start. For round start, 17 lacks prominent round start options that can immediately swing the battle in his favor, due to his short range. The most reliable option would be to create space and play the neutral out, either by backdashing or super jumping. In the long range, 17's options are relatively underwhelming, as his full screen presence is lacking. His 5S is his only immediately available projectile. Depending on the matchup, you may use more or less blasts. Throwing out one or two of them is generally low risk, but take note of how your opponent moves. One moon jump can lead to a full punish if done correctly, so be careful. When dealing with projectile-heavy characters like Baby, or slow long-range assists, capitalize off of their own projectiles using finishing driver into reverse gear in order to passively gain meter. The medium version of finishing driver can be used to punish certain beams, however the timing is strict. Against more linear space control, you can use a moon jump, or his acrobatic assault, in order to clear the gap through the air. Just be cautious to not get anti-aired. Acrobatic assault is a tricky way to bypass neutral from a range. The higher 17 is when he leaps off the wall, the more shallow his descent becomes. Use the super jump, then follow up with the acrobatic assault that sends him to the wall behind him, to then aggressively approach through the air. During the leap, you can use JS, heavy fake out, or super dash to throw off your opponent's response. Don't be too predictable with your aerial options and stay loose. If you have it available, you can use Power Blitz to counter your enemy's projectiles, or attempt to lock them down. Due to the trajectory of Power Blitz, it's more likely to land if you're either horizontally parallel to your opponent, or just slightly higher than them. Note that Power Blitz doesn't jail airborne enemies to the ground on block, so best aim it when they're close to the floor. Against retreating enemies, you can close the gap with the heavy version of XL Driver. Because of its anti-airing capabilities, you don't have to worry about falling normals or an opportunistic super dash from your opponent. If their response is late or they try to protect themselves with an assist, use heavy reverse gear to protect yourself. Using beam or beam-like assists in combination with these tools greatly strengthen these options. From the mid-range, you can use a dash-boosted 3H to close the gap. Medium XL Driver and light XL Driver into medium top gear can clear a great distance and start your offense. If the driver starters whiff, you can analyze the situation and use whatever follow-up you deem appropriate. You can use top gear and low gear to interrupt assists, or use finishing driver or reverse gear to avoid or protect yourself against projectiles or assists. If your opponent seems to be turtling, you can use a deep dash into a button to take advantage of their stagnancy. You can close the gap with dash blocking as well. If you find yourself airborne, you can use JS to intercept aggressive movement below you. On hit or block, you can either super dash, follow up with the medium or heavy versions of second gear, or use heavy fake out into top gear. Be sure to judge your range carefully, as on block, JS into these options will either be gapless, have a tiny gap, have a gap large enough to be interrupted, or with completely. Acrobatic assault can be used to reposition yourself, or to evade ground attacks and retaliate from an angle. If they super dash in response late, you can use barrier explosion, or use heavy fast fall into reverse gear to punish. It's also possible to be chased by super dash during your travel to the wall. If you touch the wall, immediately use barrier explosion. Aerial fake out can be used to throw your opponent off, especially if they're expecting acrobatic assault. If they super dash in response, you can use reverse gear or the drivers to punish. If your opponent is prone to jumping in this range, chase them down with a super dash. Or you can attempt to air with JM. If you manage to catch them blocking with a JM, you can staircase them to the ground using J236L to continue your offense. If done right, this can be gapless, or at the least have a 1-frame gap. In the close range, 5M, 3H, 5S into 3H, air dash into JM, and light XL Driver can be used reliably to close the gap and start offense, though be sure to note your enemy's options in those ranges too. If you find yourself directly above your opponent, you can use light second gear to quickly strike below, or throw off their anti-air timing with a super dash or fake out. If your enemy is directly above you, you can use 2H into super dash to catch them. This will jail aerial opponents on block. Using more standard options like Super Dash or air-to-airing with JL is also advised. Now say things didn't work out too well and you're on the defense. 17 has a few defensive tools to help get out of tricky situations. Challenging some pressure sequences can be tricky, but if you believe your opponent is going to restart pressure, you can check their approach with 5L. This can also interrupt advancing moves if the gap is large enough. For some specific scenarios like dealing with a Super Dash assist mix-up attempt, 17 can use finishing driver into reverse gear to protect himself against both the point and the assist. You can catch them off guard with the follow-up and even potentially get a happy birthday. You can also use Light XL driver as another solution with similar results, although the assist might hit you before you hit them. For his post-reflect options, his most reliable counter-attack tools are 5S and 3H. If you got knocked down, using Air Tech Backdash and J214S is a solid way to escape the corner, if the enemy's Oki doesn't cover it. 17 can also use Heavy XL driver on Wake Up to escape some poor safe jump attempts, but be warned that due to the poor startup, 17 can be easily interrupted by mashing 5L. On some poorly set up projectile Super Oki, like Gotenks' Ghost setup or Zamash's Blades of Judgment, you can use finishing driver into heavy reverse gear to avoid potential mix-ups, though this is only if the projectile doesn't hit immediately. His most useful defensive tool is his Barrier Explosion Super, due to its invulnerability. However, it has another benefit. If the opponent commits to a normal, they can use Vanish after the screen freeze and avoid it entirely. But in this case, 17 is virtually unpunishable, as there isn't any special or super that can reach him in time. The only means of punishing it is using Empty Vanish, which is a relatively rare scenario. Keep in mind its low damage scaling. In some instances it can cause the death of your opponent. Now say you managed to successfully get in and start your offense. 17 has a myriad of offensive options that can crack any defense. 17's stagger pressure is strong, thanks to most of his normals being safe on block. He can reset his strings reliably after any light and medium normal, as well as his key blast. This can help in setting up frame traps for disrespectful opponents. His 5L in particular is very good at this as it is only -1 on block, though keep in mind its range. Be sure to microdash in order to stay in. 17's JM can be used as a cross-up, though it tends to whiff at point-blank range. To circumvent this, you can either use it after a blocked normal, or jumping back before air dashing, though this method is a bit tricky to use. JS can be used for more reliable cross-ups regardless of range at the cost of it being slightly slower and giving a worse combo. You can use Heavy Fake Out or Super Dash as a same side option. You can also use ATK Heavy Second Gear for a fast overhead, though the timing is strict. The Medium XL driver feint is not only a useful way to reset pressure, but it can also regenerate assist cooldown if you've already used them. Try not to use it too often or too predictably, as it has a massive gap leaving 17 open to any attack. Besides his H normals, all of his normals are safe on block, so they are all safe against guard cancel. During 5L clashes after a 6M block, 17's 5LL makes the scenario work in his favor due to its 7-frame startup. Be sure to know your enemy's options in this situation. For anti-reflect options, 17's best tools are 5LLL, 3H, 5H, 5S, and Light XL driver. While in driver, His medium top gear and medium low gear are his go-to anti-reflect options. You can also react to reflect with reverse gear if you think the enemy will try to counterattack. Power Blitz's 17's only special that is plus on block. When used mid-screen, follow-ups aren't possible as there's too much push block for 17 to reach. Always save Power Blitz for the corner. When used in the corner, 17 is advantageous enough to frame trap into 5M. There is only a 3-frame gap between the Blitz and the 5M, which means it beats jumping, mashing, and frame 4 reversals. If your opponent is respectful in this situation, you can use instant air dash normals, or dash up dragon rush to shake up your offense. Using Power Blitz after a 2H or 5LLL will leave you almost point blank, so linking into 2L will only have a 1-frame gap. On reflect, Power Blitz will be +1, and the aerial version after 2H or 5LLL will be 0. Follow up however you deem fit. Heavy Finishing Driver is a powerful DR crush. Use it in scenarios where a DR would be expected, and follow up with light top gear for massive damage. If you have your opponent conditioned enough, you can use Heavy XL Driver for a tricky cross-up. This is harder to see in the corner than in mid-screen, though note its slow start-up. Also, use light top gear as soon as you cross up, as it is slightly faster and is a better combo starter. You can also use his overheads and fake out lows to throw off your opponent if they seem to be sleeping on defense, though both are easily chicken blockable and fuzzy blockable for those paying attention, and they can even be interrupted with mashing. After 5LLL or 2H, you can use heavy fake out into low gear or heavy second gear as a pseudo high-low. However, both options can be chicken blocked if the opponent was crouching, or backdashed if the opponent was standing. You can use Light XL Driver after 5LLL or Power Blitz after either as a frame trap to beat those options. You can attempt a similar mix-up after using JS, but in this scenario, your height and positioning will result in different outcomes. If you are point blank, the high will frame trap and the low will be chicken blockable. If you are slightly higher, the overhead is gapless and the low will frame trap. Note that the high and the low connect at vastly different frames, 3 frames at the least and 5 frames at the most depending on the opponent's state. This means that it is quite fuzzy blockable, so be sure to alter your timing to throw them off. The other thing to note is that the overhead is the worst starter, and it robs you of sliding knockdown if you don't have Power Blitz, meter for banish, or an assist handy, so keep that in mind. During driver, 17 becomes nigh on guard cancelable, as after his follow-ups he can use reverse gear as soon as the move ends. The only moves he wouldn't be able to do this with are second gear and fake out, but only if the guard cancel happened right on the startup of those moves. The same also applies to guard cancel banish, although the screen slowdown may mess up your timing, so be sure to practice that situation. While in driver, 17 has an option select known as the Barrier OS. This allows 17 to defend himself against reversals and use his driver follow-ups as frame traps at the same time. To utilize this, input heavy reverse gear just as the attack hits, and then another follow-up of your choice. If done right, 17 will go from one attack to the next on hit or block, and use the barrier if the initial hit whiffs against the invulnerability of the opponent's reversals. However, this technique is considerably difficult to do, as mistiming it too early won't have the barrier come out on whiff, and mistiming it too late will make the barrier come out after the follow-up hits. Opponents can also use a reversal then spark to avoid punishment. Also, some reversals will have so much invulnerability on startup that the blast will whiff, and because of the nature of this OS, the reverse gear follow-up will always come out. And finally, if your opponent has the meter for it, they can use ADP into a level 3 super, and punish 17. On a side note, I had somehow created a version where the follow-up doesn't come out every time. If someone could help me figure it out, please do. If you want to opt out on offense, you can use Acrobatic Assault as a method of retreat. This is especially effective in the corner. You can also use Heavy Aerial Fake Out to reset pressure. Now if you have an assist handy, 17's pressure and mix-ups become more difficult to deal with. You can use a super dash high-low as an effective mix-up. Use 2M for your low option to net large damage on hit. Low pushback assists allow for this mid-screen. From most assists, you can end your block string with power blitz charge, and call the assist afterwards to continue your pressure. If you have a high block stun assist, at 40 frames or more, you can go for a tricky left-right. If you have blitz, you can follow up with an assist with 30 frames of block stun or more for an instant air dash JM, which is gapless. If you have an assist with 46 frames of block stun, you can go for a true high-low mix-up. With a lockdown C assist, you can go for a 4-way mix-up anywhere on screen, besides the corner. If you have an assist with high push block, you can combine it with heavy XL driver, fake out, then top gear for a tricky cross-up. Depending on the assist, it can be a gapless sequence. If you have 2 assists handy, you can use acrobatic assault into heavy aerial fake out for a corner steal. To do this, use your first assist to keep the enemy in place while you jump to the wall, then, just as you hit the wall, call your second assist, then use heavy fake out into light top gear. The first assist needs at least 30 frames of block stun, while the second assist can be any assist. You can delay the second assist call to get a same side version. While in driver, you can use the overhead fake out low mix-up I mentioned earlier with an assist to cover you, though it will still be fuzzy blockable. But if your assist hits a singular time, the opponent will not be able to change between crouching and standing positions while blocking. By delaying the overhead by a small amount, you can have the overhead and the low hit on the same frame. The assist needs at least 27 frames of block stun to make it work. Be sure to use other mix-up tools to throw your opponent off. Moving on to sparking offense. If 17 has blitz, he can throw out blitz and spark for a high-low mix-up, though the low has a 1-frame gap and the high has a 3-frame gap. If he throws it full screen, he can empty vanish into JH. This has a 1-frame gap. The timing to do this is strict. 17 can use JS into an air dash JM to continue pressure. The air dash is gapless. You can use a jump cancel TK overhead or fast fall low for a quick mix-up. If he has it, 17 can throw out blitz to catch airborne opponents, then empty vanish into super dash and jail them to the ground. You can use light aerial top gear to staircase them down for an easier version. While in driver, you can use reverse gear into empty vanish for a cross-up. He can also use JM into an air dash JM, or a 2M, for a gapless high-low 50-50. You can use power blitz for a similar mix-up. Now for O-key. 17's mid-screen O-key is lackluster, so much so that I'll skip it entirely. For corner O-key, 17's air normal hitboxes make it inconsistent to use the universal safe jump, but it is something he can do. You could try to catch their tech options with JS, but full delay tech will make you vulnerable, depending on when you used it. However, 17 has very strong corner O-key thanks to his driver special, second gear. This O-key is the go-to corner O-key for 17. This O-key has many benefits over conventional safe jumps. 1. It catches both regular tech and up tech, and thanks to the unique property of the driver series, 17 can continue using multiple follow-ups on with if the opponent happens to be using delay tech. One of those follow-ups including a fast near-medium starter, a low, a fully invulnerable barrier, and a long-lasting plus on block projectile. 2. When done correctly, this Oki will regenerate assist cooldown, and thanks to 17's long pressure sequences, he can go straight to using them again quicker than most. 3. Thanks to top gear and low gear, 17 has at least 2 anti-reflect strings if second gear is reflected, and if you want to beta reflect, 17 can use fake out instead. And 4. Since second gear can't be anti-aired, frame 1 anti-airs are ineffective, and against other reversals, 17 can use his barrier OS to beat wake up reversals. From second gear, his barrier OS is much easier to use compared to the other driver specials. As amazing as this Oki is, don't think it's faultless. One of its main issues is that if you do the barrier OS while the opponent delay techs, you will be a sitting duck. The other issues of the OS I mentioned earlier still apply. And even though it's difficult to do, it is possible to use delay tech into a button to challenge and beat 17. Also note that it will always lose to counters that stun lock, so be sure to keep that in mind. Reversal supers that throw you can be avoided by replacing reverse gear with fake out. Here's a list of level 3s with the appropriate punish. It's best advised to not always use the OS, especially if the opponent doesn't have ADP. The main method to use it is to end your combo with medium aerial second gear, then as you land, follow up with a very delayed light finishing driver, and then follow up with light second gear. The timing of this is pretty tricky, so if you'd like, you can do medium aerial second gear, follow up with a slightly delayed medium finishing driver, and then use medium second gear. This version is easier to do, but sometimes it won't trigger assist regen, and medium low gear has a tendency to not anti-reflect when using this version, so I prefer the light version. There are other means of doing this Oki from other types of knockdowns. Take a look at this demo. For level 3 Oki, 17 can get a safe jump with a forward jump JM. He can also use a super jump air dash float for a high-low. You can use his specials for mix-ups as well. The higher the ring hits the opponent, the more frame advantage you have. Some characters can give him a good extra amount of frame advantage to allow for different Oki options. From full screen, 17 can get a full screen safe jump using a moon jump which will beat frame 4 options. However, if the enemy is mid-screen they can backdash. If you have AC assist that allows it, 17 can get a corner steal off of his level 3, allowing for a high-low left-right 4-way mix-up. These are the assists that allow for it. Some non-C assists, the long-lasting ones in particular, can also allow for the corner steal level 3 setup. These are the assists in question. To do this, use heavy aerial second gear, then when you are close to the floor, use acrobatic assault, call the assist as you hit the wall, then slightly delay 17's level 3.
go. I've had quite enough. Try this.
This is the end of the tutorial. If you felt informed, feel free to share with others. If you felt that I missed something, or if you have any questions, please ask. I always check my comments. Be sure to let me know if this kind of video should be something I do more often. The feedback is appreciated. Thanks for watching.